Mel,
Yeah,
we have a major announcement to make.
go for it.
Did you know that right now all plans on Mint Mobile are what?
$15 a month.
Okay, that's truly ridiculous. Do you know how much regular cell phones are?
Yep.
$1 bazillion a month. 15 is less than that.
New customers get 3 months of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month if you sign up right now. And guess what? I use it. I love it. I've used it all over the country, all over the world, and it's great. And if you're wondering about phones, they have those available as well, or you can just port your own number and your current phone over to Mint Mobile. They make it so easy.
So if people are interested in trying out Mint Mobile, how can they go about doing that?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. And you know what's interesting? When my dad died, we actually put his phone on a Mint Mobile plan because it kept his number going, but it was $15 a month. So there you go. And there's different storage plans, but you might as well just get the unlimited because it's $15 a month.
Absolutely. All right, go try it today.
That's trymintmobile.com/WWDN.
All I can think about, Mel, is that video from a few years ago about the lady who's like, I got the bronchitis. Do you remember that video? Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yes.
That lady. Yeah. Our guest, she just told us that she is recovering from bronchitis. So that's all I can think about.
I think you sound great for what it's worth. So
Thanks. I have the really sexy voice right now, so it's great for podcasting.
it is.
Why don't you tell us who you are, sexy guest?
I am Melisa Santiago, and I am currently living in Queens, New York. But I am from San Antonio, Texas, and I lived there for half of my life. But I've been here since I moved here September 5th, 2001.
Oh, man.
Oh, wow.
Perfect timing. So
How did that go?
that was crazy. But I came for graduate school at NYU. So
you were down in the lower part.
yeah, I lived in near Washington Square Park. So it was pretty close.
I know we're gonna get into other parts of your story, but for real, what was that like moving first of all, to New York from Texas? That's a big culture shock. And then, hello.
Like an actual shock.
Yeah, like
Explosion.
war zone.
Yeah, it was kind of like the first big trauma of my life, really. I wasn't even really originally supposed to go to New York for graduate school. I was going to go to GW in Washington, D.C. So I spent the summer doing a fellowship in Washington for the Smithsonian. And then I got a call saying that they had an opening that was a full scholarship with a graduate assistantship. And so they would pay me to go to school, basically. And so I just changed my plans like 2 months before school started and went to New York to meet him. And I was only there for 4 days, went back home, and then came back September 5th, 2001. Second time in New York, came with just 2 bags on a plane, not knowing anyone or anything. So yeah, it was kind of crazy.
When somebody gets full tuition paid for and an assistantship in a grad program, that must mean that you're really good at what your specialty is, or
That's
you
smarts.
were. So
She's
what
good at
is
being
it that
smart.
you were studying? What do you do?
Ah, yes. Oh, so I got my bachelor's in history with a minor in sociology, and I got my master's. It was kind of a dual program, but it's technically I have my master's in Latin American and Caribbean studies, but my concentration is in museum studies. So I work in a museum. So I've been in the museum world for since 2003. So I'm a registrar at the New York Historical Society.
Okay, I just got back from New York with my daughter, and we went to MoMA, and it was funny. I am not an art person. Some of it, I'm like, I just don't get it. And we had a lot of fun looking at some of the stuff and going, I don't know, guys, what this is about, but like the stuffed animals all sewn together, hanging from the ceiling, and every once in a while they spit water at you. Like, what? And the name was like The Art of Deodorization or something weird like that. Anyway, I have a feeling that's not your kind of museum, though.
No, actually, we're a historical society, so we're like history and culture, but I did spend 6 years working at the New Museum and they just do contemporary art. So I mean, we did things like having an installation with like a rotting chicken on a bed spring, um,
What?
and things like, crazy things like that. So yeah, and now I'm used to the crazy contemporary art. So
Oh my goodness. Okay, Melissa. We got
This is entertaining.
we
I'm good
gotta
if we keep going this
we
way.
gotta we gotta merge left or something and figure out why you're here. Why don't you tell us about your person?
sure. My husband, my late husband is his name was Alan Santiago. And we met. It's so funny. He never liked to admit how we met, but we met online back when online dating was just starting. So 2004. So the only thing out there was sort of Match.com, eHarmony. But the other thing was, if y'all remember Craigslist.
Yes.
Yes.
So Craigslist did personal ads, and you could respond to personal ads, kind of like you do in the paper. And I don't even remember if he posted or I posted, but that's how we actually met is through Craigslist.
I
So
we need to call you the Craigslist widow because you know how there's a Craigslist killer?
I
You're
know
the
that's what I was
Craigslist
thinking.
widow.
I
I was
know
like,
The
you
title
could be
has
signing up to
happened.
get murdered or
I
go on a date. Who knows? Or both.
I always thought I could be the perfect sponsor for Craigslist because I could say I found my first apartment, my first dresser, and my husband on Craigslist. So
So why didn't Alan like that story? Did he come up with a better, more exciting story for you?
he just thought it was, I don't know, I guess he thought it was a little sketchy.
That you were sketchy.
I
Okay.
think that it was just a sketchy way to meet. Like
That's
I
funny.
don't think we neither of us had ever tried anything like that before. So it was really like for both of us the first time ever doing something like that. And we just happened to meet and we got along really well and ended up moving in together like within a year of knowing each other. Mostly for what every reason and every couple in New York moves in together that quickly is because it's cheaper for the rent. But
What ages were you guys when you met?
so I was about 27 and he was a year older than me. So he's like a year and 6 months older than me. So he was about 28.
Okay.
Okay, I'm super curious. If you live in the history museum art world, what did he do? And was he
So
bored?
he, we were basically complete opposites of each other in every way possible. And we would never have met if it weren't for Craigslist. He was born and raised in Queens. So he had a heavy, heavy Queens accent. If you heard his voice, he sounded like an Italian from Queens. But if you've seen, I sent you some pictures. If you see his pictures, he's Filipino. So he was born in the United States, but his parents, both of them, were born in the Philippines. So for a Filipino, he's a really big sort of guy and actually tall and very dark. So he kind of looks Samoan because he also had tattoos on his arms. But people would see him and then he would have that accent and they were like, whoa, well, this is like very strange. But he was a total like typical New Yorker. So he was very like he was an electrician, like a union electrician. So he's like one of those working class sort of guys, even though that's not how he grew up. But he just worked as an electrician for as long as I knew him. And he ended up working as an electrician in Rockefeller Center. And that was his last job. So he did the sort of, so I think it's the second or third shift, which works from like 3 to 11 or something. So he would do some coverage for SNL sometimes on Saturdays.
Oh, cool.
But
So
what I want to know is if he put the lights on the Christmas tree.
Yes.
he did not put the lights on the Christmas tree, but he did help with the wiring from the building to the Christmas tree. So
Okay, okay.
Also, I gotta ask for him, is it Yankees or Mets?
see, he was born and bred in Queens, but he was a Yankees fan. So yeah.
That's important,
It is.
I think.
Yes, yes, to die-hard Yankees fan. Although he was not really a sports guy. Like we always used to joke that I was way, way more into sports than him. He followed some of the games and he followed mostly boxing. He was a really big boxing and martial arts fan. And then he would occasionally follow uh baseball, but he was not really a big sports guy. Like he didn't really watch sports on TV. And I used to have Sports Center like when I would wake up. It was either the Sports Center or the Weather Channel would be what I would wake up to.
What
So
about Antiques Roadshow? Do you like that show?
I do like Antiques Roadshow.
Okay, good. Okay, I have never understood why people like boxing. Like, who would participate in that sport where you're willingly going to get punched in the face? I just don't get it. Somebody please explain it to me.
Yeah, I mean, I actually grew up a little bit watching. I played soccer and volleyball, but I grew up watching basketball and also boxing. My dad was a big boxing fan, so I grew up watching boxing. But I just like to see like people hit each other. I don't know. When you're young, you're just like that's the main thing. Um, but he actually did a lot of martial arts and a little bit of boxing, so he knew about that world as
So
well.
he
So.
liked to get punched in the face. Got
Well, he
Or
hardly ever
kicked.
got punched to the face, but he did some punching
it.
and kicking.
Okay, so you move in together and you ended up getting married, right?
Well, that's another story.
Okay,
We
tell us if you want.
so so we lived in sin, quotes, air quotes,
Sinners.
for many years. I think it was 7 years before he proposed. And it was just an ongoing thing of like, when are we going to get married? When are we going to get married? When Beyonce's song, put a ring on it, or the
Yes, we're all
the
doing the
ring.
motion.
Yeah, the motion. So there were many jokes when that song came out, but it took him a good 7 years before we got engaged. And unfortunately, within a year of getting engaged, he was diagnosed with kidney failure. So
Come on.
Hmm.
yeah, that was a bummer. So we were planning on having like a really nice or medium-sized wedding, but that sort of got kiboshed. And we ended up just getting married at City Hall with our best friends. And we didn't get married until, I guess, 5.5 years before he died. And we were together like 18 and a half years, but we were only married for like the last 5.5 years.
So, do you know like why his kidneys decided they weren't going to participate?
He had a lot of issues, various issues. Um, he had a pretty bad asthma as a kid and allergies, so he's allergic to a lot of things. But he also high blood pressure and diabetes runs in his family. And I think for him to be diagnosed so young, which he was about 35 when he was diagnosed, he actually was, and before he was diagnosed, he was hit by a car in Vegas. Yeah. My
Okay.
husband my
I'm
husband was a
sorry.
magnet for like he almost died like 10 times in his
Oh my
life. So
goodness.
we had a joke that saying like he would never die because evil never dies. But he so he was always like a big, healthy, fit sort of guy. And then in 2009, he went to see the boxing Manny Pacquiao fight in Vegas with his friend and did something stupid, which crossing illegally on the Vegas Strip because they have these sort of overhead pedestrian walkways. But he decided he was just going to cross the street. And so he crossed the street and a car hit him, hit and run. And
Oh no.
yeah, so he was in Vegas and we were only together, I think, 4 years at this time. And so he shattered his, what's the long leg, the femur or
The
the
femur.
the femur in his left leg, and it was replaced by a long metal pole. I think it's titanium. And I think he broke both bones, and then he had screws in his ankles, and he actually landed on his head. And we also had a joke that he just had a big fat head that like cushioned his fall because he barely had a concussion and barely had a scratch on his head. It was really his leg. So he spent, I would say, at least a month in Vegas before he could leave.
Wow.
And then after that, it was, I want to say 6 to 9 months before he could work. So
Wow.
that really like limited him, and that caused, and even before that, he had issues with some high blood pressure. But I think after that, just being not as mobile for a year, you eat more, you gain weight, you're not moving around as much. So he gained a lot of weight, and he just became a little bit of healthy, lifestyle. So he started having trouble with a little bit of diabetes, but mostly high blood pressure was really the bad thing. And he was not really
Interesting.
good about going to the doctor either. I mean, neither of us were. And it was actually the only reason he got diagnosed with kidney disease is he ended up, I think,
I
the year
can't wait to hear what you
before.
say
I
because
Oh
it's
know.
my
going to
God.
be something
Does that have
equally
to do
crazy.
with
I know. He
MMA?
no, he got a pneumonia twice the year before. He was diagnosed, and the second time he was diagnosed, they did like full panel blood, everything, and they told him, "We think there's something wrong with your kidneys. You need to see a specialist." And that's when he saw a specialist, and they diagnosed him. And by that time, kidney disease, I mean, it's one of those things they call like the silent killer, because unless you get tested, you don't really feel the effects of the disease until it's pretty much too late. And so that was like, he was right at that stage where it was basically sort of end stage. And he didn't last too long before he had to go on dialysis.
Was he a candidate for a kidney transplant?
So, yes, he could have done a kidney transplant. It's funny thing about the kidney transplant is you have to be healthy to be on the kidney transplant list. And he was maybe out of all the years he was sick, he was maybe healthy like 2 years
Mm.
on that. And it's a really long process. Like it could take 6 months to a year of different doctor's visits and different tests and different things to get on a kidney list. And so he did that with two or three different hospitals, and one he it was too long of a waiting list, and so he just kept trying with the other two hospitals, but he had a large amount of complications. One being he had sleep apnea and he had asthma, so he had a lot of issues with his lungs. And then the longer you're on dialysis, you have all these different complications. So he started having heart issues, and he had various stents put in. So once you have a stent put in, you have to wait a year before you actually are able to try to get back on the transplant list. And he had three or four different surgeries for stents. So
Sounds complicated.
yeah, getting on the list is super complicated. But even if you're on the list, the wait is sort of insane. So
Did you think about the black market? Did you think about stealing somebody's kidneys from the subway? Because I think that might happen there, just from my one
he
experience there.
he always made jokes that he had plenty of family members in the Philippines that he could pay off just to come to the United States and donate their kidney to him. But
Never happened.
we never, we didn't have enough money for that plan. So and it was one of those things also, like insurance is very tricky with kidney disease. So he had really good insurance. I mean, he was an electrician with the union, but they would not pay for the surgery. They would cover dialysis and different things, but not the surgery itself. And so they tried to push them, and I think a lot of insurance companies do this, try to push them into going into Medicare, because Medicare has this exemption that if you're in end stage renal failure, you can, no matter what age you are, you can go on disability and get Medicare.
Hmm.
And Medicare sort of covers everything. So there is a majority of people who have end stage renal failure that are using Medicare, no matter what age. So eventually he went on Medicare, but in order to go on Medicare, then you can't work. And
Right.
he had a very, very good job and made a lot of money. And he did not want to quit his job, but after I think it was 2 or 3 years, it was just really too much for him because his job was very physical. So he really had to quit his job.
I was gonna say dialysis, when people are on dialysis, like that's your whole life. Like it's like many hours a day, depending on how often you go a week, but it's like 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, 3 days a week. So I mean it's like having a full-time job. Less banging on pipes and electrifying things and more sitting in a chair, but still. It's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And he actually didn't quit his job. He was let go.
Oh,
And it was really just because he couldn't really, work as hard as he used to.
How does that work with the union? Do they still allow them to keep pension, or does it affect anything that's like union rights with him?
He just basically has to keep paying dues and things.
Okay.
So the union's pretty good, actually. So when he passed away, I actually do have his local and his international pension.
Hey guys, just checking in and want to say if you are enjoying this podcast,
and you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I
I
think.
think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes! Thanks, guys! Back to our regularly scheduled program.
So tell us about like how did he end up dying? Like, was it just his kidneys gave out and he decided not to do dialysis? Was dialysis not working?
After a very hard, let's see, he started dialysis in 2014. And like I said, numerous complications, which I could list them very quickly, but he had a pulmonary embolism. So he had to go on blood thinners. He tore both his quadriceps at the same time and had to go into the hospital and rehab for an extended period of time.
This poor guy.
He had many stents for heart issues. Towards the end, his mobility was very impaired. Oh, when he was in rehab, when he first got his catheter, he got a staph infection near his heart, which is very serious. Also had trouble with his fistula. So he ended up having to get another fistula in his left arm at a certain point. When he was in rehab, he got MRSA. So he had to have a second surgery on both of his legs, and he had to have wound vac on both of his legs in the hospital. He also almost bled out in rehab because they weren't really watching him. So he had to go to the hospital emergency room for blood transfusion and platelets. I mean, there's like a series of which is why he never went on the transplant list, like series of things that could have caused him to die. About a year before he passed, he just got really, really sick. A couple of times I had to, well, too many times to count. I had to call an ambulance and get him to the hospital. But one of the last times, he was not cognizant. He was sleepy, very lethargic. They took him to the hospital. Everything, basically all his levels were off. Everything was wrong with him. And he wasn't breathing. And so they had to intubate him. And so he was intubated for a week before they took him off. And that was about a year before he passed. And he just had a lot of issues with his lungs that got pretty weak. And he had to use a lot of, we had an air tank, an oxygen tank here at home. And eventually he had a mobile one that he had to use. And then there was the pandemic in between. So which actually he was the most healthiest during the pandemic when he wanted to get on the transplant list, and they would not let people get on the transplant list during the pandemic. So he just was
A disaster.
basically
Basically,
using walkers. And
how old was he?
so he was 45 when he died,
Okay.
and that was in October 2022. We made it through the pandemic without getting COVID, which was amazing. I made him super, super isolate, which he did not like because he is very much a people person. And then as soon as the mask mandate went down, we went to the store and he caught COVID, and then I caught COVID. I immediately called this pulmonologist and we took him to the hospital. And they did, I don't remember which treatment they had at the time for COVID, but they only kept him 24 hours and then they released him, knowing all his complications, which I thought was crazy. Um, and he was better for a little bit, but he had a really bad cough that never went away, and he had really, trouble breathing. And I was super sick too. I think I was almost out of work for like 3 to 4 weeks. So we were basically at home sick together, and the doctors didn't want him coming into the office, so they did a lot of telemed. And one day, I think it was my first day back to work, I went to work, kissed them goodbye, and my dog walker called me about 4 hours later, just saying that he was not responsive. This was October 27th, 2022.
Mm.
Um, so I tried to get home as fast as possible, but in New York, that's impossible. Basically, they couldn't resuscitate him. So by the time I got there, the ambulance were basically leaving, and there was two cops outside my house, and they had told me he had passed.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
So technically, was he considered a COVID death or a kidney death or a both?
I don't know if you guys know this, but if someone dies in the home, the police have to do an investigation,
Hmm.
and possibly
Or
an
was it
autopsy.
murder?
Exactly. So that's why the police were there, as well. In order to sort of bypass all of this, I told him he had COVID, that he had kidney disease and lots of complications, and they said, look, if you don't want an autopsy, we don't have to do an investigation. All we need to do is have the detectives call two of his doctors, I think his pulmonologist, I don't know if it's his cardiologist or his nephrologist. Two of the doctors talk to them, and if they just confirm everything, they would just release the body to me without having a autopsy, and there wouldn't be a case opened or anything. And so I didn't see the need in having an autopsy. I mean, I don't need to know exactly what caused him to pass. I know it wasn't his heart because actually he saw his cardiologist 3 days before and his heart was fine. So it was probably his breathing, because that was the thing that he was having the most trouble with. So
So, Melissa, you are in New York. You are from San Antonio, but now you're in New York. You've been in New York for a while. Do you have any family? Like, what's your support system like? You've just lost your husband. You're what? You were 40, 43, 44 when he died?
yeah, I was 40, 43, turning 44, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what did it look like when you were widowed? How did you get by?
It was really tough. I was basically his caretaker for almost 9 years. So I had really isolated myself, and did something that you probably shouldn't do, which is try to do everything yourself and not ask for help. Basically isolated myself from the friends that I did have, and barely talked to my family. I mean, my mom's like my best friend, so that's the person I talk to the most. But basically, by the time he passed, I didn't really have that support system in New York. My mom came after for the funeral, and she stayed with me for about almost 2 months. And basically, I had to go to work, and I was like, Mom, you have to go home. I'm going to go to work. What are you going to do? Just stay here and clean my house while I'm gone? Because she's retired, and she didn't want to leave me, but she ended up going back after about 2 months. So I was really alone. I was isolated. I didn't have that many people around me. I was lucky that we had lived in our co-op apartment in Queens for like almost 10 years. So I knew a lot of my neighbors, and I'm pretty close with my downstairs neighbor. My dog walker, who is the most amazing person, angel slash everything, who found my husband non-responsive. She's a retired police officer, and rescues dogs. And she's my dog walker. And so she has been amazing. My neighbors have been amazing. But it has been really sort of isolating, being here in New York and trying to like reach back out to to friends, and I do have a great job and coworkers, which helps because I went back to work, I think in January, and he passed away October 27th. And my boss was very understanding. We were still in a hybrid schedule, so I only had to go into work 2 to 3 days a week, and I could work from home the rest of the time. And I really think that first year she just didn't give me as much work as she could have. And a lot of people I think covered for me. So I didn't have sort of that first year of work was not super intense. So when I was home, I could work a little and like sleep if I needed to. So I was lucky in terms of my job. Actually, the day that my husband passed, I came from work, and my first thought, I called my mom, was crying, screaming, and I was like, "Mom, call my boss. I left work. She needs to know why." I don't know why I said that. And she actually did call my boss, and my boss basically was there in like 45 minutes to be with me until my husband got taken away. So she's
Okay.
amazing.
Okay, wait. This is the best. What's your boss's name?
Her name is Emily Kroll.
Okay, so your mom's like, dear Emily, please excuse Melissa from work. Her husband has passed away. Sincerely, her mom.
I was like frantic, like you know those when on the movies when someone's person dies and they like are hysterically crying and like you think it's like oh they're being over dramatic. That was me. That was totally me. I was that person. And so that's how I was on the phone with my mom. So I can only imagine how my mom was with my boss. She was probably like just as intense as I was, probably crying and screaming, "Oh my God, he's dead, he's dead." So like I'm sure she was freaked out and just like drove or took a cab to see me. So, but she's amazing.
And you guys did not have any kids, correct?
That is correct. I come from a very Catholic background. He does too, so I did not want to get have kids before marriage. So unfortunately, when we got engaged, he was diagnosed. We tried to have kids and it just didn't work out. He was just too unhealthy by that time. And we thought about, different options, adoption, IVF, everything like that. And by that time, he'd gotten really sick and he had gone on disability, so we didn't have as much money. So those options were really limiting. And so it was best that we just did not have kids, even though we both really, really wanted kids. So we had our fur babies who were
Oh.
our children, our lovely children.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the grief that potentially came along with not being able to have kids because of his health and then becoming a widow.
So I went from a family of me, my husband, and my two puppies. And in April of 2023, no, in January of 2023, when I went back to work, my one of my dogs got really sick and she got cancer. And so she lasted about 2 months before I had to let her go.
This
So
always happens, I swear.
so she died. She was very attached to my husband. So it was like, I was, secondary losses. I was like distraught, but it seemed like to make sense. Like he would have wanted to die if she would have died first. So, and she was very despondent after he died, and she did not understand why he didn't come back and would bark at the door and cry and bite at me because he just wasn't coming home. She was super, super crazy, missed him, but she passed away. So that really, really hit me hard. My other dog was 13 at the time, and he was very, very sick throughout the past 2 years. And he ended up passing the day after my husband's first year anniversary.
No.
That's not okay. Oh my gosh.
So within a year, I'd lost my husband and both of my puppies. So it was a horrible year to say the least.
Yeah.
Plus the numerous medical issues I have endured since being a widow, which is too many to count. I mean, yeah,
You inherited all your husband's bad, like, luck. I feel like there's just like a
yeah,
bag, it's like a with little pieces of paper that have all the possible problems you can have in your life, and you guys just keep having to pick those out. Random things, but he passed
yeah.
that along too.
It's been a rough like 2 years. losing both my dogs, having numerous health issues, seeing over 7 doctors for various things, not really getting treated for what was wrong with me, but the symptoms, and not treating the illness. And finally, in, I want to say of April this past year, I finally was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which caused a tremendous amount of my symptoms that I had been treating with the other doctors. And as soon as I got on a pill, I was way better.
So, do you think that that was as a result of stress from being a caretaker and then becoming a widow?
Yeah, I really do. I think it might have even started right before my husband passed, because that's sort of when I started having my lower back pain, which I've had some medical issues that have been light, like I've had issues with my ankles, I've twisted my ankles, I had plantar fasciitis, I had a neuroma in my foot. I have had a lot of issues with my legs.
Anita
Um,
loves neuromas
No, you
because
know what I like more? I like the wound vac more. That's where I was more like, ooh.
that was crazy. So I've just had a lot of issues with my legs, and I basically I ended up just walking funny for like a very long period of time, and I caused a problem with my SI joint. So I have really bad pain in my lower back where the hip and the leg bone meet. Basically, it's like impacted, so my left leg's slightly shorter than my right.
that
So
sounds fun.
sounds fun. That was the first sort of like, which is painful, but it shouldn't have been as painful as it was, where I actually went to the ER and asked them to, like, I thought I had kidney stone problems, and they did all the tests, they did a CT scan, and they're like, oh, you're just having back spasms.
You're fine, you
You're
stupid woman.
fine. You're fine.
This is the portion of the episode where I would love to reference the Holmes Rahe Stress Index scale. You know what that is, right, Melissa?
Oh yeah, that I was blowing me through the roof, and I was just like, that was the first doctor I went to, and they're like, "Oh, you just have back spasms." I'm like, "Sure, I'm in so much pain." I came to the ER,
Jeez.
and 2 days later, I ended up getting hives, and I had an allergic reaction to the contrast.
Oh,
Oh,
fun. So when you
See?
when you heard about the stress index scale and how many things, and you can add up your score on that scale, were you like, I live this, I understand this. What would you say to somebody that's like, that's a bunch of BS?
or like a doctor, if you wanted a doctor to actually listen to you, like what would you say to the people out in the world who
Don't believe in stress-induced illness.
who have to deal with people who are going through really stressful things?
Yeah, I mean, I basically seen 7 doctors before I basically pleaded with my new primary care physician, saying, there's something wrong with me. It's not these individual things. I need help, and you need to help me. And basically, he did like every blood work known to man and made me see a rheumatologist, because he's like, maybe it's an autoimmune disease. Like, he's like, there's definitely something wrong. But basically, all the individual doctors were just not putting two and two together. And fibromyalgia has just like so many different issues.
Did somebody just saying to you, I believe that something is wrong? Did that just feel so validating for somebody to just say, I believe you? Like, I don't think you're making this up. I don't think this is just back spasms. Like, let's try and figure this out. I just think that just having that amount of validation is worth the world.
Yeah, and it was basically 2 doctors. I mean, I had seen a pain med specialist, I had seen an orthopedist, I had seen a gastroenterologist, a urologist, in addition to just my primary care physician and gynecologist. Um, and it was just like all these different issues. And basically, the urologist was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, this like 60-year-old white man. So he refers me to another urologist who was a young African American woman who saw me for 5 minutes and said, I know exactly what's wrong with you. You're a widow, you're stressed. This is causing you to have all sorts of different kind of spasms, including your pelvic floor basically is weak because you're spasming. So she's like, there's not technically anything wrong with you, but it's stress induced. So she was the first person to say, like, this is all stress induced.
Props to that doctor. And also, this is so hilarious because Anita and I texted yesterday
About pelvic
And
floors.
and I'm like, Anita, you're a physical therapist. Why did you decide to not be a pelvic floor physical therapist? And she told me her reason. But I think that's something that not a lot of people know about. I'm actually going to an appointment next week, which by the time this comes out, no, have been long gone. But it's true. It's like just some of the stress like can cause certain things in your pelvic floor. And so, have you done any rehab for that, or did they mostly just like diagnose you and give you information?
Yeah, I mean, they told me that I could do pelvic floor exercises and all sorts of different things, but really the being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, because one of the symptoms is incontinence. So being on the medication has helped a lot. But there are exercises and different things to strengthen the pelvic floor that you can do. So I'm a firm believer in physical therapy, yoga, acupuncture, Tai Chi, all those things out there. I'm investigating all of them and
What about
see what
MMA
works.
and boxing?
Yeah.
Have you tried those yet?
No, answer no. Hey,
Not yet, not
Melissa,
yet.
you can skateboard with me or roller skate anytime, which probably won't help any of your SI joint problems. But
No,
you have meds, right?
exactly, exactly. And I'm pretty much the world's clumsiest person in the world, but
Great. Get
Even
on a
better.
skateboard.
most of my injuries have been self-inflicted. So yeah.
So, Melissa, it's almost been 2 years. How has year two differed from year one? And part two, what are you looking forward to in year three? And looking forward can be in quotations or actually what you are looking forward to.
Anita, I hear we have a store.
Oh, we sure do. We've actually had it for quite a while. It's called the Snarky Grief Shop, and it's where you will find all of our best grief merch. That is, yes, a little snarky. For instance, it's where you will find the official widow card that you can pull and use at your convenience.
You can put it in your wallet, and anytime you need to use it, pull it out, play the widow card.
Yeah, we have glow-in-the-dark stickers. We have shirts that say, "Be nice, my husband is dead." We also have the ones that are not quite as jarring, so that you can wear them out in public and not feel weird. But sometimes you need that shirt.
I wear my Be Nice, My Husband is Dead to bed because I'm a little scared to go in public with it. But you've worn it on airplanes before with your kids.
Yeah, every time we go to the airport, I wear that shirt because I'm just like, listen, I got to get all these kids through security. Just be nice to me. Thank you so much. And it's worked for the most part.
Some of the less snarky grief shirts are podcast shirts or Widow Wives Club. We also have Resilient AF, right, Anita? What else we got in there?
Yeah, which we're telling everybody who cares, like Mel's mom, that means American fork because she can't know what it really means, guys.
Yeah.
Stickers and mugs and notebooks and just cool stuff that you can use to express your snarky grief. You'll find it by going to our website, shop.widowwedonow.com. There's a lot of W's in there, so just make sure that you've counted them and there's the right number.
We will link to that in the show notes, and it's also in our app, which you can get from the App Store. Can people get it from our regular website too?
Yes, if you go to widowwedonow.com, there's a link for the shop in there too.
Great. If you'd like to show your snark or have something a little more subtle, go ahead and check that out. Again, that's
shop.widowwedonow.com.
I think year one was really just like I would like to say the shock and awe. It's just like major widow brain, super fatigue. I mean, I'm all the fatigue that I was feeling. I just thought it was because I was being a widow, and then after a year, I was like, "Come on, it's been a year. Why is this still happening?" But it was really just like a big haze that first year, and then especially losing my dogs and husband all in 1 year. So it was like a crazy first year. I would say the one thing that did save me was going to Camp Widow that first year, and that was sort of like my first like aha moment where like, oh, there are other people out there. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. Second year was some say second year is harder, and it has been for me. Even though the first year was extremely hard, I think it's just the shock and awe sort of wore off, and it was like reality set in.
And you had
Um,
to pay rent by yourself in New York.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky. I would suggest anyone, if they're getting remarried, to remarry someone in the union because they really do take care of you. Because the union was amazing. I basically got a pension check a month after my husband passed.
Good.
He had an annuity. He had some money from his health fund, so I got a lot of money, and also his health insurance. I have double health insurance because I could keep his health insurance for, I think it's 3 years after he
Oh,
passed.
that's nice.
wow.
So I'm doubly insured, so I'm seeing every doctor known to man.
Yeah. Yes. Get all of the things taken care of.
Yes.
Melissa, you have had a lot of stress both pre husband's death and post. Do you do anything for fun? Can you do anything for fun?
Fun. What is that?
I know, right?
Um, I think the thing that has helped me sort of decompress. I mean, the first thing during the first year, it was really hard for me to do anything. So the only thing I could do was actually listen to you guys' podcasts, which saved my life that
Oh,
first year, I have to say.
yes.
I basically binged it until I caught up. And then just it opened up a whole world of sort of widow and grief and reading. And um, I did a lot of Audible books. Of course, all the standards, Body Keeps the Score, all the top books that you guys mentioned, I've done on Audible because I have no concentration for reading anymore. But yeah, that really helped me for my first year, until I was able to sort of enjoy things again. And now I'm getting out there more, seeing friends more. I love music. It's also saved my life. It's music is amazing. I used to play the violin for 8 years, so trying to start it again, but it's so hard after not playing for so long.
And it's like the hardest instrument, I think.
It's like I've lost all my muscle memory. I love binging, going to the movies. Of course, I'm in the museum world, so getting back to going to museums, seeing art, going to openings, things like that. And also just going out and meeting people. I went to Camp Widow again this year and decided to become, I don't know why, because I'm crazy, the co-regional leader for the New York City area. So
Great.
Yeah.
so we are getting started scheduling meetings for the fall. So I'm excited
Nice.
about seeing more widows and reaching out to people, sort of giving back. I've been wanting to sort of volunteer or do things and give back, and I think this will be one way to do that. I also reconnected recently with someone I went to college with whose partner passed, and we have kind of similar spouses and situations and things. So that was also nice to reconnect with someone that I had known and we're kind of like in the same situation. So
That's great.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
yes.
I love that you're gonna run the area.
Run the area.
I don't
She's
know
gonna
what
be
to call it.
the widow mob boss of
The
Queens.
Craig
Oh, Queens.
Craigslist widow of
Nikki is the
Queens.
other widow mob boss, right? When you are anticipating doing these meetings, are they going to be in person since I mean, it's obviously post-COVID, but do you guys, are you planning on that and some online stuff, or is it mostly in person?
Yeah, we decided, I think people like meeting in person. I know for me, it was hard to do online Zoom things
Hmm.
my first year. So we're going to try to do in-person stuff at least once a month, and then maybe some pop-up things, and also online things. We're thinking for the days that people really need it and don't want to go out. So maybe New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
those sorts of things.
Wow, this
Um,
sounds fantastic.
yeah,
Melissa,
so.
as we finish up, I wanted to just let you tell us a little bit about when you wrote into us, you told us that people who have kidney disease are much, much more at risk for suicide. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that as we are finishing up?
Yeah, I was actually, it was one of the most shocking things that when my husband was diagnosed and we had our first meeting, that was one of the first things they actually said to us was, It's very common for you to get depressed and have suicidal thoughts. And I was like, huh? That was like one of the first things you tell me is after you're diagnosed with kidney disease. But then doing the research, I mean, I think I read a study that depending on what stage you are of kidney failure, it's something between 15 to 50% of people who have kidney disease are depressed or have suicidal thoughts. And that I think you're 25% more likely, I believe it is, to consider suicide if you have kidney disease or on dialysis. So there's a couple of different studies out there, but it's a real concern, and they actually tell you up front that that's one of the things that you really have to manage. I mean, my husband had a very long struggle with kidney disease, and one of the biggest issues and complications was his mental health, which was partly because of his disease, but he also, to his credit, had been seeing a psychiatrist for a while and then ended up seeing a psychologist for many, many years. So that helped a lot, and he was on different medications and things. So even with all that help, it was extremely difficult on his mental health throughout the whole journey, and my mental health as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I think that was not something that I was aware of. And so I thought that was important to share with our audience. That's just something to, even have on your radar. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for sharing your story. Mel has our final important question for you.
You know this question. What's your favorite cheese?
I have a cheese story, first of all.
Okay.
When I was younger, I did not grow up from a very, I wouldn't say we were a poor family, but we weren't exactly middle class. So the only cheese I knew existed was like mozzarella and cheddar and queso, because I'm from Texas. So that was the only cheese I knew. And then when I went to New York, I was like, there are other cheeses.
I love this.
And I was like, I want to eat them all. So I love all types of cheese, but if I had to pick a favorite, depending on my mood, I am partial to brie and cheddar, also Munster, but
if I had to choose, names three.
I can't choose. No, but I mean, the thing I make and eat the most is queso, actually. I'm from Texas, and we make homemade queso, and we make it every occasion, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, barbecues. I mean, queso all day. So, and homemade chili, put it inside the queso. So, yeah. I can't live without chips and queso, basically.
Please make it for the widows in your group, and then also come visit us and make some for us. Or maybe we'll visit you. Now I'm hungry.
I want some queso.
I make some mean homemade enchiladas, refried beans, and Mexican rice. So
yum. Okay. We gotta wrap up now, because now we gotta go find something.
Now we're hungry. I know.
Now
Thanks a lot.
It's taco time now. It's taco time.
Taco Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa. We hope everybody has enjoyed listening to her story. Remember, if you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
Buy us tacos or queso or chili at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
And we always appreciate a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Melissa.
And we are just two young widows and one transplanted widow mob boss. And we're all just trying to figure out, widow,
we
do
now.
One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them, and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
Go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.